It's a couple of minutes early, but there's a lot of people here, so I'd like... I'm not doing a slide presentation. I'm doing that quite deliberately because I actually would like you to listen to me rather than stare at the screen and write down what's on the screen. So I know it's not very fashionable, but it's the way I am. I'm going to start because there's so much to get through. I mean, this is such a ridiculously big topic that I really can't do it justice in 30 minutes. I could quite happily stand here for 2 solid days and just cram your minds full of tons and tons of information. And that's what happens when you start studying a subject that is really astonishingly interesting. And I have to say, I find this absolutely creative beyond belief. I think one of the reasons, when I left university, you know, all my mates went off to become lawyers and accountants and management consultants and doctors and dentists and big great careers, and everyone needed those people. Everyone needs plumbers, everyone needs electricians, but nobody needed an SEO guy because the internet didn't exist then. I mean, nobody even had a computer. It just shows how quickly the world has changed, and I honestly think today that the skill and the ability to rank things highly on the internet is one of the most amazing skills that one can have, and it's very, very powerful for any business. And that's why I love this subject and love what I do. I'd just like to get an idea of the audience. How many of you here would describe yourselves as entrepreneurs? Hands, please. So maybe about 1/5 of you. I'd just like to get a sense of, I mean, we entrepreneurs, we're a slightly different breed of people. We kind of think differently. We act a bit weird sometimes, and we're very much momentum driven. When we're creating our businesses, we create momentum. At least that's my sense, having studied the entrepreneurial personality type a bit and recognizing myself in that. For the rest of you, can I just get a sense of why you're here? Well, if you're not entrepreneurs, and I include within that people who are, you know, maybe in partnership with others, those of you who aren't entrepreneurs, what are you looking for? Why are you here at this lecture? What do you want to find out? Just a couple of 2 or 3 answers would be really helpful for me to know where to pitch this. I'm delighted you're here. It's not a trick question. I can talk to the entrepreneurs in this audience all day long, no problem. But there's most of you don't consider yourselves entrepreneurs, so I'm really curious, you know, what it is about ranking in Google that you would like to find out about. Please, somebody, talk to me. Anyone. Otherwise, I'm just going to make assumptions and I'll just carry on with my talk. Okay, never mind. I was really trying to get a sense of what you're trying to accomplish, what you want out of getting websites ranked highly, and why you deserve it, and what you're prepared to do to have it. So I can't be too thorough here. This is a huge subject. And anybody who wants to try and first of all, I'm just going to say that I'm talking about SEO. And when I talk about SEO, I think of 3 main search engines. The first one is Google, of course. And when I say Google, I also mean Bing and Yahoo, you know, and 1 or 2 others like that. I don't consider them to be separate particularly. YouTube is a separate search engine. It's an amazingly powerful search engine, and it is a lot easier to rank videos on YouTube than it is to rank a website. A lot easier. So there's my first little tip for you. And I also consider Amazon to be a search engine par excellence. Of course, people go there with their credit cards in their pocket ready to buy, and that's a whole separate conversation. Now, there are challenges, but can I ask the question, people in this audience, and I'm fairly certain that the entrepreneurs in you will answer yes to this question, but the rest of you, do you believe that a high SEO rank on Google can earn you more money? Can I have a show of hands for people who think that statement is true? Excellent. I got about 2/3 of the audience. That's good. Because I unashamedly think that's true. I really do believe that those people who run businesses, who have their own businesses, who are selling products, they're selling services, whatever it is, I honestly think that if you have a very high ranking on Google and you're high up on page 1, particularly for search terms, keyword strings of words that people search, particularly when there are a lot of people searching for those terms, I actually think that that can transform a business. And by definition, it can transform an entrepreneur's life completely. And this is one of the frustrations I find with some of my clients who perhaps have a sense they want to get some instant gratification and believe that these things are going to happen overnight and these changes are going to happen overnight. And in many cases, they kind of forget after a little while why they engaged me in the first place, because I can be doing work for them in the background, and it takes time. It takes longer now for Google to register changes than it used to. And anybody who sets off on the path to have their websites rise through the rankings on Google, you have to take this as a long-term game. And it's not a sprint. And if you try and game the system and you try and do lots of clever things to artificially pump your ranking up, yeah, it might work for a little while, but unless you're incredibly clever and know how to game the system, and I don't recommend that, I really don't, then you'll probably get done, you'll be busted, and your site will be penalized, and it really isn't worth the effort. And it's not actually necessary, because Google actually tells you quite openly what it wants. And if you give it what it wants, you're going to do a lot better than you currently are. So there is a way, there is a methodology to get to search engine domination, and if you combine it with tried and tested methods, then you will ultimately make more money. And in this short time, I'd just like to give you a few insights in some of the ways to do that, and unashamedly like to show you that I know what I'm doing. If anybody would like some help, I would be delighted to work with you. But I think the first thing to think about is there are really two aspects to getting more traffic to your website. The first one is what I'm fundamentally talking about here, that I would call free traffic, or organic traffic. You have let's say you're a plumber in Wimbledon, you're an emergency plumber, and somebody needs a plumber immediately. They type into Google, emergency plumber Wimbledon, and if you come up number 1, and they go onto your site, and you've got a nice clear site, and somebody who wants an emergency plumber is probably because they got water leaking, and they don't want much information. They just want a phone number. They want to ring you, and they want you there in 20 minutes. Now, ranking for emergency plumber Wimbledon is going to be a lot easier than ranking for lose weight now, for very obvious reasons. There's millions of business globally that want to sell you weight loss products and tell you how to lose weight. And I need £1 million a month budget, and maybe in 5 years I might have a chance of getting you somewhere close, but it's really not very practical. Lose weight fast for men in their 50s with big beer bellies who don't want to take any exercise. Now, it's going to be a lot easier to rank for that, but obviously there's going to be a lot fewer people searching for that. And in the jargon, we call that low-hanging fruit, or long-tail keywords. So if you did want to sell weight loss products, you might have to be a little bit more modest in your aspirations. So Google's constantly evolving, and what does it want? I mean, Google is a business that generates a lot of advertising revenue, and it wants to give its customers great content, and it also wants to know that you, with your website, you're real. And you might well be real, but you have to show Google that you're real. And of course, if you've got some social media activity and so on and so forth, and if you've got a telephone number listed on your website, which happens to be the same telephone number that's in the telephone directory, little things like that, then Google does know that you're real and is going to take you a lot more seriously. Now, if you're in a business, one of the key criteria, and there's hundreds of criteria that Google use to determine where you appear on the search engines. One of the major ones is backlinks. Now, if you don't know exactly what I mean by that, if you, for example, went to the website of this exhibition company and you looked at the list of exhibitors, you would find my agency there, everydaychampion.com. You've probably got my name, my contact details. And when you look down, it'll have my website address, www.everydaychampion.com. And if you put your cursor over it, it'll change color, and you click on it, and it will go straight to my website. Now, that is known as an external link. And to be massively simplistic, and this is very, very simplistic, the more links you have, the better. However, you can't send lots of spammy links. You could 15 years ago, but it doesn't work now. It doesn't work now at all. It really doesn't. And some links are more valuable than others. So if, for example, let's say I did some work, gave some SEO advice to somebody who set up a small business under the Prince's Trust. And the Prince's Trust website put out a little blog showcasing this person, how well their business is doing, and mentions me or my agency. They got a bit of SEO advice, and this was magic, and saying to the world how wonderful I am. And there's a link to my website from the Prince's Trust website. Well, that's quite a cool link for me. That's got gravitas, that's got value, because the Prince's Trust website is one that everybody knows, and if I had a link from there, that would be valuable. Now, on the other hand, if I had a 18-year-old student that has just gone their first week at university, meets me here and writes a little bit of piece and on their blog that 5 people read, and they say something nice about me, and there's a link to my site, well, that's great. I mean, I'll happily have it. I'd rather have it than not have it, but it's not going to be nearly as valuable to me as the Prince's Trust link. It's got more link juice. Does that make sense to everybody? Great. Now, building links is it's a subtle art, and there's ways and ways of doing it, and there are ways definitely not to do it. And it was one of the things that set Google apart from other search engines some time ago, when they started counting these links. And you can kind of consider it like a vote. In that hypothetical example, I got a vote from the Prince's Trust. That's a nice vote to get. And I got a vote from an 18-year-old student. Yeah, it's a nice vote, but it's not as strong. And what Google is looking for is for natural relationships to start building up around your website. So if you've got some YouTube videos, a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and so on, it's all grist to the mill. It all gives you good credibility. And you need to start thinking in terms of the links to your business in a sense of an ecosystem. Just over a year ago, I actually, for my sins, I sat down one day and I read a Google patent. I mean, I actually sat down and read the thing from start to finish, and the amazing thing was that I got it, I understood it. And this patent was about having natural patterns. If you look at a sequence in nature, you may have heard of the Fibonacci number sequence. You find this natural sequence of numbers everywhere in nature. And Google effectively wants to see natural link patterns. If you do anything that smacks of being forced and spammy, you're going to get into trouble. Your site will be blacklisted, and you'll have wasted all the time and money, and nobody's going to find you. Now, one of the you really have to start thinking of doing a plan. Building links is very, very important. nothing is hidden on the internet nowadays, and any new client that I do when I'm doing a plan for them, one of the first things I do is I look at their competitors, the people that are ranking for the kind of words they'd like to rank for, and we reverse engineer and see what are they doing, how have they done it. And that often leads to some fairly creative ideas of how you can mimic and do similar things in a slightly different way. But the first thing that you're going to have to do is really work on your website. And any new client that I take on, the first few weeks, I'm sorry, there's no way around this, but the client actually has to do quite a lot of work if they're really interested in rising up through the rankings. And we call this on-page optimization. The first thing is to really look at the keywords, the string of words that people are searching for. And as I say, lose weight now. Good luck on that one. That's a very powerful keyword string. And the long tail ones, the ones that are longer and more specific, they get less traffic, but nevertheless, it's a lot easier to rank. And as I said before, we call that low-hanging fruit. Start picking off some of the low-hanging fruit because it will work, it will help you. And then when you're looking at what you're trying to target, you then need to make sure that your website reflects that those phrases are in the site in a natural way. And you can't just stuff your site with these keywords. The piece of copy you've written makes no sense. It's like the tail wagging the dog. That's no good. You want to do it in a less is more kind of a way. And I mean, let's say your business, you're going into a competitive field, you've got next to no links, you've got a new website, and you look up some competitor that's, or something like me can look it up because I got software that does this kind of fancy stuff. Look at one of your competitors and you discover they've got 157,346 links. And you think, oh my goodness, how on earth am I ever going to compete with someone like that? Well, the good news is that there are techniques and ways that you can implement that mean that you will need, maybe only 20% of the number of links of other people if you do things in a certain way. And one specific tip that I'd like to give you today is to look very seriously at your website architecture, the way that it's set out, the way that it's constructed. So if you were to look at my website, for example, everydaychampion.com, a lot of the inner pages aren't accessible from the home page, and you'll see on the menu I've got a button which says SEO London. Now that's for obvious reasons because I'm in the business of doing SEO in London, and there's another page which is e-commerce London. Same thing. Now those are both very, very, very competitive terms. Now if you go into the SEO London page, to that home page, you will then find that there's a new menu where there are several articles which are all related to SEO London. Now one of them is SEO London video marketing. Another one is SEO London something else. And you can only access those inner pages from the SEO London page. And that's something that we call a silo. And all of those pages are only related to SEO London. And so when the Google robot comes along and looks at this, the first thing it's going to see is, there's all these articles about SEO London, and they're only about SEO London, and they're all different. This site's obviously about SEO London, and it's more than me just putting it in a code or a tag at the back of the site. I'm actually trying to tell the robot that, there's a lot of material here about SEO London. And the same with e-commerce London, same thing. And this silo web architecture structure is very, very powerful. And what it means is that some of those inner pages can start to rank with a lot fewer links than other sites will need. And it's just a very, very powerful way of showing Google what this part of the website is about. And so if you start, and this is relevant to you if you have a website where you've got a lot of things to say, you've got a lot of content, and you must put original content up. There is absolutely no value in rehashing and regurgitating and copying stuff from around, because the Google algorithm, it doesn't like it. Google wants to give its customers interesting original content. And I really, really strongly recommend that you use videos on your websites. It's for many reasons, because the internet is quite an impersonal medium, and if people come onto your site, you want to try and give them a sense of who you are, and that they feel a kind of warmth about it. And it's one of the things that I say. There are certain professions and types of websites that in America do use video quite a lot, and they don't in this country. I've analysed some of these sites, and the fact is that if you're a little bit not sure about whether you want to interact with this site, a video from the owner, or a video giving a product demonstration, or just a simple video, can make all the difference. And one of the other benefits from that is that it will attract people to stay on your website for longer. And Google likes that, because as you can imagine, if Google sees that people come onto your website, they stay there for 3.5 seconds on average and then leave, it's going to conclude that your website's not much good. If, on the other hand, lots of people come to your website and they see a video, oh, that's interesting, click on it, and they watch the video, even if they watch a quarter of it, they're going to stay on your site for a lot longer, and Google likes that. So it's all about making your site compelling, making it interesting, giving good value. And you must absolutely, in this day and age, make your website mobile friendly. Particularly today. This wasn't the case 10 years ago, but now you walk around London, everybody's sort of walking around staring at their smartphones. People consume internet information in different ways nowadays. So if, for example, you're looking to sell products, research has shown that the majority of people will find you and your brand and your advertisement or your homepage or whatever it is, they're most likely to find it on their smartphone. Now, you've got to continue to engage with it. And if you're going for paid traffic and advertising, one tip that I would give you is that you target your advertising, whether it's on Facebook or whatever it is. If you target your advertising where you're just trying to get initial exposure, target in mobile devices, because that's where most people are doing their searching now. And research has shown, as I was about to say, that the majority of those people, they won't necessarily buy from you or inquire from you, but they'll go back and they'll switch to another device. And if you're then retargeting those people to follow up, hey, I saw you came onto my site. I'm sure a lot of you have had this experience. You go onto a website, and then the next few days, everywhere you go on the web, there's an advertisement from that website. It's designed to give you the impression that these people are huge and spending millions of pounds on marketing, but it's not true. They're just dropping a little cookie on your computer. So everywhere you go, and it's fantastically effective. And if you're doing a retargeting campaign, you're better off to retarget laptops and desktops, because that's actually where people are going to look at it in greater depth and buy from. So that's just a little tip if you're going into paid traffic. So I've talked a little bit about competition, reverse engineering, looking at what your competition is doing. I've talked a little bit about links, and you've got to be very, very careful. You must do that properly. There's something called the semantic web, and that is about information, and it's really just it's very difficult to explain that in simple terms to laymen and laywomen, but people like me who've got fancy bits of software can generate some code that you can put on the back of a website where you're actually telling Google who you are, what you are, and if you just put that bit of magic code in there, it really helps your rankings. But you would need some technical help for that. Another thing, so there's so many things I could talk about. I'm very conscious that we're running out of time. So I've been talking about organic traffic, which is kind of free traffic in inverted commas, but it's not really free, because if you want to get high up in the rankings, you're going to have to make an investment, whether it's time or money. Now, a lot of these things you can do for yourselves, but of course if you're an entrepreneur and you're spending your time running a business, it's not really the best use of your time, and actually it's probably more cost effective for you to get someone like me and pay me some money to do that kind of stuff. But there are many, many things that entrepreneurs can do themselves. One particular one that I'd mention, which is another tip, that if you're trying to revamp your website, and most people's websites are designed by web designers, and they may look cool and all the rest of it, but they haven't necessarily been designed by people who understand marketing. That's why one of the reasons I mentioned the silo structure. So yes, that's paid traffic. Sorry, that is free traffic, but you've got to make an investment. You either pay someone like me to do it, or you're going to have to invest your own time. And one of the great ways you can just start, even if you don't really think, oh my word, this web designer's done a great website, but oh, this guy told me about the architecture of the site, oh, it's all too complicated. And it's a good idea to tell the web designer to do it in that way. But one of the ways you can immediately boost your site is something we call citations, and that's basically putting your website, listing it on various directories, and that will start to increase your digital footprint quite dramatically. So if you're that mythical emergency plumber in Wimbledon, he could put his business on the Wimbledon Chamber of Commerce website. Just stick it up there, put his name, address, website, relatively straightforward. And so it's local chambers of commerce, local business things, local business in Battersea, Camden, whatever it is, all the way up to the yellow pages and Dun and Bradstreet. And getting your site listed on a lot of business directories is a really, really good thing to do, because it just immediately, as I call it, the digital footprint, it immediately gives you more visibility to the robots, and it's a very good thing to do. And you don't need someone like me to do that kind of thing. You can do it yourself. It is quite time consuming, and a lot of places are going to get you to verify your address. They might send you postcards, and you've got to give them code numbers and all sorts of things like that. Someone like me can probably do it in a much more efficient and quick way, and it's probably a better use of your time. But it is something you can all do relatively easily. I knew this was going to happen. I got so many more things to say, but there we go. So you got to ask, what's your site trying to do? Really, really encourage you to use videos. You've got to think about your on-page work, getting the pages of your site to say what it is that you're about clearly, targeting some of those keywords, interlinking to your site to other pages. I mentioned citations. That's something that's citations is like the first step of an on-page. So, if you want to play a Chopin piano concerto, you need to learn the scales first. Doing the citations is like doing the scales. It's really simple. It's really basic, and it's really the first step if you want to get your website boosted, and it's not very difficult. And then, of course, there's links, as I mentioned, and I only touched on that. So I hope that you just got a sense of this. This is a vast subject, and I've only been able to touch on it. It's a great opportunity to brand yourself if you make your site engaging. And don't forget that your marketplace is the whole world now. Not if you're an emergency plumber in Wimbledon, it isn't. But for many people, your marketplace can be the whole world. And there are ways to DIY this, do it yourself. People like me can help you get a plan together. I have various mentors from whom I have learned the most amazing material, and I now see search engine optimization as a game. The mentors that I have, who are geniuses, who've taught me most of what I know, all seem to have, they're all American, and they all seem to have a background in spending far too much time playing video games in their youth. But they consider this to be a game. They're playing a game with a robot. I don't have a great big long track record. I didn't spend my university years playing pinball. I never played video games. I do love playing chess, So I'm trying to bring that sense of playing a game to this work and make it fun. I find it an enormously creative process, and being committed to mastery of internet traffic is it's an amazing journey. I still got a huge amount to learn, but it is very creative and very fun. And so if you want to play with your websites and try and get higher in the rankings with Google and YouTube, treat it as fun. Treat it as a game. Don't see it as being a stodgy kind of task. If you have fun with it, if you engage your creativity, then you'll find your rankings rising. And of course, if you'd like to talk to someone like me and give me some money to do it for you, I'd be delighted, because it's an amazing skill. There's a lot to do, and it's a very, very creative process. But if you are going to hand over to someone like me, you're going to have to spend a lot of time talking to me and giving me a lot of knowledge about your field that you're in, so that I can do my best for you. So I hope you found that useful. I've whizzed through it. There was tons and tons of stuff on my notes here I wanted to talk about, but anyway, I didn't quite get there. But if any of you would like to have a chat with me, you're more than welcome. Thank you.